I promise to protect your daughter for the rest of my life. I suddenly stopped when I heard that shyly declared voice. After all, it was the voice of my husband. I turned around slowly, not believing what I just heard, to see my husband and my best friend standing there, arms around each other, looking happily at each other. I stood there, dumbfounded, as a joyous atmosphere enveloped the area in front of me. Snapping back to reality, I forced a smile on my face, pushed through the crowd, and made my way to the front. Reaching in front of my husband and best friend, I ignored their shocked expressions and walked up to the stage. They just stared at me, unable to say a word, holding on to each other protectively. I smiled at them, and with a gesture, silenced the murmuring crowd. Then, grabbing the microphone from my husband, I took a deep breath and introduced myself. I am the wife who wasn't promised protection. My name is Hannah Peterson, a 26-year-old housewife. My family runs an upscale sushi restaurant, and even after my marriage, I have been helping out there. I've had a close friend since high school. Her name is Melissa Roberts. She's someone I'd call a best friend. Melissa is flashy but always cheerful, caring, and kind-hearted. She's been the same way with me, and when we first became classmates in high school, she reached out seeing how nervous I was. From there, our bond grew, and now we can share anything and everything with each other. After high school, Melissa and I went to the same university and remained close. During a fun time in a university club, we met Michael. Michael was a senior and the leader of our club. He was kind, sincere, and dependable. I was drawn to him. Melissa quickly noticed my feelings and became my confidant about Michael. By the time Michael graduated, Melissa encouraged me to confess my feelings to him. I wasn't exactly keen, but with Melissa's strong support, I decided to give it a shot. It worked out. Michael and I began dating and got married right after I graduated from university. However, based on my preference, we didn't have a formal ceremony. We just registered our marriage after introducing each other to our respective parents. So, Michael and I started our life together in a new apartment. My parents did suggest buying a house, but Michael promised to build one in the future, which satisfied them. Our initial married life seemed smooth. Michael worked hard, saved for our future, and was always kind to me. One day, I made a proposition to him. One rare evening when Michael got home early, we were enjoying our time together on the living room couch. During a lull in our conversation, I told him I wanted children. Really? I see. Well, I'll work even harder then. Though Michael's response was a bit off, I understood that raising a child required funds. Though my parents could easily help us financially, Michael seemed reluctant to accept such assistance. When we moved into our new place, I had asked him why he declined my parents' help. He said he wanted to fend for ourselves and manage our own life. I admired Michael for his principles. Similarly, when it comes to our future child, he wants to raise it with our own resources. I was moved by Michael's dedication and didn't push further. However, there were certain incidents that made me doubt Michael's commitment. About 2 years after our marriage, when I brought up the topic of having children again, Michael said, "It's about time, right?" Got it. I'll start learning about child rearing. His cheerful response left me speechless. I began to wonder if he was subtly refusing my wish. And lately, Michael has been coming home late from work. Initially, this wasn't the case, but ever since he mentioned learning about child rearing, his late nights have increased. Michael had started working before me and had already secured a job. Thus, it was only natural that he would gradually climb the corporate ladder and become busier. But ever since I brought up the subject of children, he began coming home past midnight and sometimes didn't return at all, citing sudden after-work drinking sessions. No matter how I looked at it, it seemed suspicious. When he came home late, I tried my best to make things comfortable for him, but he began to react in a distant manner, almost like he was trying to avoid me. Moreover, Michael began doing things that were unlike him. Lately, he started visiting my family's sushi restaurant after work or drinking sessions. While I was pleased with this, when he cheerfully suggested, "Isn't it hard cooking every day? From now on, I can just eat at your place," I was almost taken aback enough to drop the plate I was holding. Such incidents continued, and I decided to closely observe Michael's actions. His behavior at home, his relaxation time, and I hate to admit it, but any signs that he might be cheating on me. However, Michael showed no such signs, and maybe he realized I was watching him, as he began to spend even less time at home. Nights where he didn't come home at all, or came home only after I had fallen asleep, became frequent. One day, during a time when such behavior had become the norm, Michael returned home for dinner. "What happened? It's rare for you to be home at this hour." Without thinking, I blurted out my thoughts. I immediately regretted it, but Michael, seemingly unfazed, responded casually. "Yeah, I was supposed to be late at work today, but I have a sudden business trip tomorrow. I need to prepare right now." Saying that, he quickly fetched a large suitcase from his room and began hurriedly packing. He kept asking where certain things were, and I found myself flustered and inadvertently helping him pack. Once most of the packing was done, Michael suddenly said he was hungry. I served the food I had prepared for myself, and he commented, "It's been a while since I had Hannah's cooking. Home-cooked meals are the best." After finishing his meal, he went straight to the bathroom and then to bed. I cleaned up, letting out a deep sigh. The next day, Michael left for his business trip before I even woke up. I wondered when he'd return. He hadn't informed me about the duration of his trip. Although he had packed clothes for roughly a week, I assumed he might use coin laundries and reuse them. Back to the mundane routine of doing household chores, reading books, and assisting in the family sushi restaurant in the evenings. This routine continued for about 5 days, when a call came from Melissa, which was a pleasant surprise after so long. To be honest, given Melissa's affluent background, every time she hosted a party, she favored my parents' sushi restaurant. Since graduating from university, she had joined a company to gain experience before inheriting her family's business, so she probably hadn't had many parties. When Melissa called, my voice naturally lit up. "Hey, Hannah, it's been a while. Could I order sushi like before?" "Long time, Melissa." "Of course, how many servings would you need?" She mentioned it was a smaller gathering this time, so I took an order for 50 servings. To me, that seemed like a large amount, but for Melissa, it probably counted as a smaller gathering. I promptly informed my parents, and given the occasion, decided to personally deliver the sushi to Melissa's house. On the day, once the sushi was prepared, I set out enthusiastically for Melissa's residence. I wasn't interested in the specifics of the party, but the prospect of seeing Melissa made me excited. I rang the doorbell and announced my arrival. A housemaid opened the door, greeted me warmly after such a long time, and ushered me in. I was directed to the hall, where the party was taking place, and began laying out the sushi order. The party was already underway, and Melissa's father was addressing the guests. I tried to be inconspicuous as I worked, but the adults around me paid no attention to me, seemingly indifferent to the caterer arranging the sushi. Just as I was wrapping up, a sudden applause erupted from the adults behind me. I was startled, nearly spilling the soy sauce I was holding, but managed to compose myself. I heard someone ascend a platform and begin to speak. However, the voice was all too familiar, and I froze in my tracks, momentarily paralyzed by what I was hearing. "I vow to protect your daughter for the rest of my life." Hearing this declaration, made with a hint of shyness, my mind went blank. The voice echoing in the hall belonged to my husband, Michael. I turned around slowly, in disbelief, and saw Michael arm in arm with Melissa, both beaming happily. Completely dumbfounded, I scanned the joyous atmosphere before me. Snapping back to reality, I pushed my way through the crowd, determined to confront them. As I approached them, they both gasped in shock. Ignoring their stunned expressions, I climbed onto the stage, and they retreated slowly, looking at me as if I were some sort of apparition. After descending the platform, they stared at me, speechless, clinging to each other as if seeking protection. The hall grew restless, with Melissa's parents urgently questioning the pair. However, the two of them gave no response, just holding on to each other, staring at me. With a smile, I addressed the bustling crowd to silence them. Once they settled down, everyone seemed to be waiting for my next words. After ensuring their attention, I turned abruptly towards the couple and, grabbing the microphone from a flustered Michael, introduced myself confidently. "Good evening, everyone. I am the wife he failed to protect." Upon saying this, not only the attendees but even Melissa's parents looked shocked. Their reactions alone confirmed that this plan was orchestrated solely by Melissa and Michael. Turning to face Melissa, still wearing a sweet smile, I inquired. "So, Melissa, are you getting married? To him? Congratulations." As I spoke, Melissa clung tighter to Michael. Michael, in turn, clung to Melissa, making it seem as though I was the villain in this story. To clear up any misconceptions, I decided to explain the situation to everyone present, except for the guilty duo. "Everyone, while you may have thought today's gathering was to announce this couple's engagement, I regret to inform you that this is not an engagement party but an infidelity disclosure gathering. Please keep this in mind." This statement further heightened the tension in the room, even drawing heightened reactions from Melissa's parents. Thus, I decided to provide a detailed account of the situation and interrogate the two. "First off, Michael here is my husband. Though we didn't have a formal wedding ceremony, we are legally married. And Melissa here, she's been my best friend since high school. So, in essence, I've just been betrayed by my best friend and husband. Do you think this is just a coincidence?" I directed the last part of my statement towards Michael and Melissa. However, there was no response from the two of them, and I just shrugged my shoulders. Then, Melissa's mother said she hadn't heard that I was married. With that revelation, the intentions behind Melissa's actions became clear to me. From the time I got married, or perhaps even before that, Melissa had been targeting Michael. I caught a brief glimpse of Melissa, and she was biting her lip, shooting a glare in my direction. Then, as our eyes met, she suddenly lashed out, saying, "Stop spreading lies. I never betrayed you." Seeing Melissa, who until this moment had been supportive, resort to such unconvincing defenses, I sighed and continued with my narrative. "Everyone, did you hear that? Melissa claims she hasn't betrayed me. But what exactly does she mean? Who was it that fully supported my relationship with Michael, and who celebrated my marriage announcement the most? So, who exactly is this Melissa who now stands with Michael, intending to marry him behind my back? Enough of your insinuations. Someone, get her out of here." Melissa's voice pierced the room with a sharpness. However, Melissa's father, with a stern voice, silenced her. Apparently, the parents, who had been unaware of the situation until now, wanted to hear the full story. With that understanding, I decided to address the room, especially Melissa's parents, to make them fully aware of the situation. "As I mentioned earlier, it's thanks to Melissa that Michael and I started dating. And when I announced our marriage, she was the most joyous. Yet, why now is that very Melissa attempting to secretly marry Michael? Can you explain this, Michael?" Turning my attention from the now furiously blushing Melissa to the flustered Michael, I awaited an answer. As expected, Michael, after being directly called out by me, trembled and stammered, unable to articulate a clear response. Running out of patience with his evasiveness, I carefully chose my next words to provoke him, pressing once again. "I'm asking you, while being married to me, why are you trying to marry Melissa? Was your earlier vow to protect her for life a lie? Or was our marriage itself a lie?" "I've never lied." Michael's voice rose defensively, as if trying to prove his sincerity. Regardless, his words sounded insincere, but at that moment, it didn't matter to me. "Oh, really? Then isn't this situation odd? Being married to me while vowing to protect Melissa for life? Sorry, but in this country, we neither have polygamy nor do we accept bigamy." Upon hearing this, Michael, looking like he was on the verge of tears, began his confession. "It's not like that. I mean, initially, I did want to marry Melissa. But I believed she'd never be interested in someone like me. However, seeing you always with her, I thought if I could get close to you, maybe, just maybe, I'd have a chance with Melissa. Listening to this, my anger boiled, but I pretended to remain calm, ensuring everyone present heard everything. So, you approached me to get to Melissa? And you've been avoiding conversations about having children because of her? That's right. I mean, if I had a child with you while planning to marry Melissa, how could I ever leave? Though I had hoped he'd deny it, Michael confirmed everything. Without waiting for my response, Michael began to spill everything. As if revealing everything might lead me to forgive him. Plus, your family owns a high-end sushi restaurant. Your parents are generous, and I thought it wouldn't be bad to eat luxurious sushi whenever I wanted. I was on the verge of lashing out when suddenly Melissa began laughing loudly. It's good you have something to offer. Honestly, I didn't even want to order from your place, but Michael insisted. Be thankful. And to clarify, I've never thought of you as my best friend. You were just a useful tool to elevate me. Melissa, revealing her true colors, seemed to have given up on hiding her feelings or perhaps felt empowered by Michael's revelations. It was a long-term plan. Ever since I met Michael in college, I wanted to make him mine. But Michael himself lacked the courage. So, I thought if I used you, Hannah, to get to him, Michael might realize his own worth. And once he did, I believed I could easily discard you. The hall buzzed with whispers and murmurs at Melissa's shocking revelation. Melissa's parents sat there, hands over their mouths, staring at their daughter in disbelief. Amid this, Melissa clung tightly to Michael, glaring at me. Then, Melissa's father stepped forward and apologized to me. Then, turning to the audience, he said, I deeply apologize for the disgraceful behavior my daughter has shown today. I am truly sorry for any discomfort this may have caused you all. And he turned back to me, apologizing once again. Hannah, I'm so sorry. I never imagined our daughter would grow up like this. Given how close you've been to us, I don't even know what to say. I won't ask for your forgiveness, but I hope we can resolve this matter quietly. I understand wanting to defend one's child, but this is too much. If she shows no remorse, I intend to make this a public matter, I responded. Melissa's face turned pale as I spoke. Her mother, from a distance, was in tears, which seemed to drain Melissa even more. Watching her, Michael awkwardly tried to comfort her, making inappropriate gestures, even insinuating raising his hand at me. Observing him, I couldn't help but wonder what I ever saw in him. As Melissa tried to distance herself, it was clear Michael didn't understand. Seeing them bicker, my interest waned, and I decided to settle things once and for all. Well, now that I know about your affair, I'll be seeking compensation from Melissa for the emotional distress she caused. I'll also be demanding compensation and a divorce from Michael. Of course, I'll be expecting a division of assets as well. What? Just because you weren't attractive enough, you blame me? Melissa spat back, clearly irritated. Melissa's parents seemed panicked, recalling my earlier threat to make this public. Michael was muttering about his inability to pay any settlement, but I couldn't care less. The two of them began to whine, and frustrated, I held the microphone tight. Fine, I'll make it public then. Maybe experiencing some backlash will make you reflect on your actions. As I tried to exit the stage, Melissa's parents pleaded desperately. Hannah, we'll handle the compensation. Please don't make this public, we beg you. But seeing their desperate attempts to shield Melissa only reinforced my belief that they were only thinking of themselves. Melissa showed no signs of remorse. And I decided it was time to deal the final blow. You might act confident now, but your affairs will soon be exposed. Melissa's eyes widened in shock. And the entire hall broke into chaos. Stepping back to the microphone, I declared. Everyone in our college knows about your escapades. Keeping multiple men on the hook, and being with the most convenient one when it suits you. How many do you think have seen you? The latest was just yesterday. I've been informed you entered a hotel with a man. As I finished, Melissa's father shouted at her. Her mother began crying uncontrollably, while Michael looked utterly lost. The guests were buzzing, and some even started sharing their own testimonies. Seeing the commotion, I decided to slip out. Arriving at my parents' home, I found them closing the shop earlier than usual. When asked why, they mentioned they had opened just for an order from Melissa's family. Thinking it was perfect timing, I helped my parents close up the shop for the day and shared with them what had just transpired. They were outraged, but I was desperate to prevent them from getting involved, fearing our family business might suffer from bad press. Thankfully, my parents understood and we discussed our next steps. Divorce from Michael was a given, and any discussions with Melissa's family would be through a lawyer. Michael, being as unpredictable as ever, initially resisted the idea of a divorce. But, once I threatened to expose our situation to his parents, he quickly agreed. Even though society might frown upon divorce, it felt like he never truly grasped why we had reached this point, which made my anger flare up once more. Thankfully, his parents seemed reasonable. They apologized over the phone and even visited in person to offer their apologies. They also assured me that Michael would pay a substantial amount in alimony, which was a small consolation. The real issue was Melissa. Despite our agreement to communicate through lawyers, she had the audacity to visit without prior notice, insisting she needed to talk to me. Of course, our shop was open as usual that day, and I couldn't just turn her away, so I let her in. Mom and I sat down to chat with her, but Melissa's parents seemed to be desperately trying to hand over a paper bag without explaining what was inside. When pressed, all they would say was, "It's just a token of our feelings." Growing impatient, I pressed further, only to learn it was their attempt at compensation. Melissa didn't even bother showing up and just sent money as if that would settle everything. Both my mom and I lost our temper. I asked if they preferred the police getting involved for disturbing our business or if they'd just leave without causing any more problems. Melissa's parents quickly scurried out. After all that, I was able to finalize my divorce and regain my freedom. I never heard from Melissa and her lot again, and my shop continued to thrive as usual. Still, having experienced such turmoil in a place I was so familiar with left me feeling unsettled. Upon my parents' advice, and with a steady income in hand, I decided to take a leap of faith and move far away from my childhood home. In this new place I'd chosen, I was determined to bring to life a dream I'd always had, albeit a vague one. I've always had a passion for cooking, especially baking. I cherished memories of taking my homemade treats to school and watching my classmates enjoy them, and I'd always harbored the dream of opening my own cafe. Fortunately, I had some savings, so as I relaxed in my new apartment, I began planning my future cafe. Despite the challenges I'd faced, thinking of what's to come fills me with excitement and an overwhelming sense of joy.